In my opinion, I am pretty perfectly imperfect, and there's a lot of good things about myself that I think I have to give myself credit for in very humble and realistic ways. However, welcome to my channel. If you're getting to know me, then you probably need to know a couple things about me so that you know what to expect by what I say in my community posts and how I do my videos. And this podcast is going to kind of spill it all. This podcast, first of all, welcome to the Real Me podcast, a podcast where I talk about who I am and what makes me unique as a person, with my opinions, with my thoughts, with my experiences. And so the thing about it is that this episode is going to be really personal. I'm going to tell you that right up front. This is not involving anyone else. This is involving me. This is something which I want to reveal to you because I feel comfortable doing this real, authentic podcast where I share who I am and what I'm really about. And this podcast is very much that. This podcast is focused on things that are wrong about me and that set me differently apart from others. Now, I am into astrology. Most of my videos are astrology videos. And I talk about the natal chart and talk about the planets and the placements and the aspects and what makes you unique with those things. What, as a chart, what defines you, your personality, what makes you unique. By all the different placements in your chart and all the different personal planets and outer planets and all the things like that. But there are some things in life that go beyond astrology. Now, to just hint at what I am going to be getting into in this podcast, I want to start out with a quote that I think is so interesting and so profound that it is not that you have a disability, it is that you have a different ability. Think about that. You may not be able to do this, but you are so good at doing something else. And we're all not going to be having the ability to do everything. No one can have the ability to do everything. So we're skilled in some things and we're not so skilled in other things. So, all this kind of things like that, where we have our own, abilities. Like we're not able to do this, and it's just a different ability. And you could say, well, we all have different abilities, but not to separate disabilities from different abilities. It's just, that's the truth of it. It just is a different ability. So I don't need to go any further with that. I just want to begin with that quote. Another thing that I want to also begin with is one of the singers. If you go under my music channels, you're going to find that one of the first singers on there is Susan Boyle. Amazing, incredible singer. Incredible. Has a beautiful, rich voice, right up my alley. Sings very wonderful, slow, major key songs, which are so beautiful. And she can sing very richly, and she has a real talent for singing. And she is one of my favorites. And like me, she is an Aries. And there's also something else that she has in common with me, which if you see her and get to know her, you'll probably wonder about this. Susan Boyle has Asperger's, which is a very, very minor form of autism, where you're very, very high functioning. You can do a lot of things like that. Very knack for like creative talents and all those things. But you can suffer from some things which I'm going to get into. So that's what makes her, very, very unique. And she was diagnosed with that and all those kind of things. Now, I'm not going to just flat out say I have this. But what I will say is that when I was born and when the doctors, diagnosed me, whatever, and this is not something to be ashamed about. This is something to kind of claim and be honest and transparent with you about. but it does not mean anything particularly negative. I just want you to be aware of who I am. Not that it will ruin the effect and joy of my videos, and not everybody who sees my videos will see this episode. I happen to have something called level 1 autism. Again, very, very, revealing and very like, why am I saying this? Why am I revealing this to you? Well, it's not as you're thinking, oh, you have, disability, or, you know, there's some issues going on, whatever. It's actually not like that. There were very minor issues in my life that I have found that I want to talk about, not just what this is about, but how it relates to my life. And that's what this podcast is about. Now, this all has to do with how your mind works. And I say over and over again, I have Mercury in Taurus. I mean what I say what I mean. I'm very grounded. I'm very, kind of stubborn in my thinking. I'm very, set and all those kind of things like that. And I was actually born with Mercury standing still in the sky in my natal chart. Like, it was standing still at the moment I was born. I was born on a day where Mercury at 1 degree of Taurus turned retrograde. Later on that day, I was just born just before it turned retrograde. And I was also born just before the moon entered Scorpio. And thank goodness I don't have the moon in Scorpio with my south node there. That would be way too much to handle. Way too intense, way too emotional, way too reactive, way too obsessive. No. I'm so glad I don't have moon in Scorpio. Preferably, I would want moon in Taurus or moon in Pisces, but definitely not moon in Scorpio. So the universe, said, nope, you're not meant to have this, and I was born with moon in Libra. But anyway, Mercury was standing still in my chart. And that means that when Mercury stands still, your communication, when a planet stands still, that planet has a really, really strong impact in your chart and in your life. Like, really strong. And so communication and the specific planet and sign really, really depends on that. So communication, thinking, how I perceive information, has been, based off of the astrology, a really, really important point in my life. And communication has been one of the big issues of my life. And so my Mercury in Taurus in the 4th house, talking about emotions and expressing it in a family and home setting, really has played a big part in my life, if I have to be honest. And so I was born with Mercury standing still in the sky, which is why I feel my Mercury in Taurus more intensely, why I hold on to things more intensely, because when Mercury is standing still, it's in its full power. It's like standing still. It's maximizing its power at the height of its power before it turns retrograde. So that's the astrology of what goes on. The very, very first thing that is not wrong with me, but, I'm going to put that in quotes in this video, just like I put in another episode, my progressed Saturn in Virgo, which I found out that the progressed Saturn was not. But apparently I heard from an astrologer who has experience over 40 years mention the progressed Saturn changes signs every 7 years. And besides the fact, I would tend to agree with that. It resonates with my life a lot, but anyway, one of the things about this level 1 autism, or just one of the things about, I'm just not going to even say that repeatedly over and over. I'm just going to talk about myself and, who I am based off of what I have and what I have been diagnosed with. This is a very vulnerable, I wonder if I'm going to regret this or wonder if I'm doing the right thing doing this. I mean, I did spill out other personal things on previous podcast episodes. I think this doesn't make too much of a difference. And I will be very shocked if there are any judgments in the comment section under this video. I will be shocked. I will be very, very surprised, because I found out that social media is a kinder place, that people are more understanding. It's very Aquarian, more accepting of each other's differences. We're in the Aquarian age. I just made a video about that the other day. Yeah, I will be very, very surprised if there are judgments under this particular video, because this is something that you cannot change, that you can certainly, improve or change within yourself, but you cannot change what you were diagnosed with. You were born into this body and you were diagnosed with all these kind of things, and this is the makeup of who you are. That makes you unique. Like it's just an inherent part of who you are. And let me be blunt and honest. I do not wish I was, level 2 or something like that. I'm glad I'm, just this, because it really hasn't interfered with my life, in my opinion, all that much. Some things, but it hasn't been like a problem that I've experienced and felt like it was a big problem. So, the very, very first thing is that with Mercury and Taurus, I say that with Mercury and Taurus like things the same. Taurus is a sign that, maybe I say I have Mercury and Taurus so much because I don't know if I'm confusing it, but I'm also basing it a lot off of this thing. And I found that the symptoms of this validates Mercury and Taurus. And so I think that's what I'm going to tie it back to. So one of the things is that Mercury and Taurus likes things to stay the same. It doesn't like things to change a lot. It's not comfortable with change. It's not adaptable to change. Like Taurus is fixed earth. It stays with its material structures, its material things. It likes to live in the same house, sit in the same chair, listen to the same music, go to the same restaurant, order the same thing. Like it's very much the same. Like it's a very same-oriented sign. It likes things to be routine. It likes the stability and the comfort and the familiarity of that routine. Which is why Gemini comes in after that, says, hey, change things up, open up your mind, be more flexible to things. Like it comes after Taurus, it's like the problem of the last sign, the next sign solves it. Like, okay, the shadow of Taurus is very stubborn, very rigid, not willing to just bend with the wind and bend like a bamboo. So Gemini's going to come in and say, hey, we're going to fix this and we're going to make it more adaptable now. We're going to, open up our mind to, new ideas and meet people. And through this, we become more open-minded. Gemini is very open-minded and genuinely curious. And then we have, we're cut off from our emotions. Then Cancer comes in. We're not proud in our heart. We're very, vulnerable and sensitive. Leo comes in. Well, it's just this constant thing of this building of the sign from the next. Like we will look at the positives of the sign, the shadows of that sign. The next sign, I want to say, corrects and shows the way to heal, and solve and remedy those shadows. That's what the next sign shows in astrology. So in my life, I, need routine. I have a lot of Gemini energy in my chart. I need variety. If something's so stuck and stagnant and so, the same old, like the same, job and the same da-da-da-da-da, I get bored. Like I have this thing, but I have energies in my natal chart that balance this out. And so I have 4 placements in Gemini: my Descendant, my Black Moon Lilith, my Venus, my Mars, all in Gemini. And so because of this, I'm very open to change, and I'm very not wanting the same routine over and over again, the same wake up every day, do the same thing with the daily grind. Another thing is, part of this is the need for things to be concrete. That's very Mercury and Taurus. It has to be concrete. I have to understand it in a realistic, practical way. Like it has to be very practical and realistic for me to understand what it means to me. Like I have to understand what it means to me and how it applies to me in my life. Like Taurus is a very personal earth sign. Like it's not interested in what applies to everybody else, like Aquarius. So broad and open-minded. Taurus is about what gives me stability, what gives me material comfort and prosperity in my life. It's a very individual sign, especially because the first 6 signs in astrology are very much about the individual, and then you introduce others in the world with the next 6 signs in astrology. So the need for things to be concrete is very, very huge with this, autism level 1. Another thing that goes along with this, while I am wanting change, there's a difference between the good change that I want and the variety that I want and negative changes or sudden changes. Like, for example, it would mean that I would not be able to adapt if we just suddenly got up and moved to a new house. It would mean that we could not go to a new land, a new job in the factory. It could not mean, we just go on a new diet or, the FODMAP diet that I'm on right now because I got out of the hospital. I need something to sort of make that change easier, obviously, as a human. Say, oh my gosh, this is a big one. In my life, if like a teacher goes away, they're teaching for a while, then they go away and somebody new comes in. That change scares me. And let's just hope that it's for the better and that teacher is better than the last teacher. And it hasn't really been that way. I've always preferred the last one to the other one. But like an example of this is that when I was in 6th grade, first of all, 5th grade, very, very tough. I was walking on eggshells with the teacher. 5th grade was brutal. I'm just going to put it that way. 6th grade, a breath of fresh air. 8th grade, a breath of fresh air. I'm not going to get into that. But 6th grade, it was like the teachers were not, like you could get away with a lot of things. Not anything, but a lot of things. But more importantly, it was just so easy. I didn't have to be under pressure with the teachers. There wasn't a whole lot of homework. There were so many things about 6th grade that were easy because you were just coming into middle school, you were new to the building, and so we don't want to make it so difficult for you your first year. But when you get used to being, in your first year of middle school, then we're amping it up. We're turning up the volume knob. We're stirring the pot. And so 7th grade happened, and it was tough. Because when 7th grade happened, there was more homework. The teachers were more, demanding and had higher expectations, talked a lot more about things in class. Like it was hard because things were hard to understand, very, very hard skills to understand. The very, very first day of 7th grade was very, very tough because it was a long day. It felt like the longest school day I've ever experienced in my life that I remember up until that point. And I had lunch late in the day, and it was just such a sudden change. I was resistant to go into 7th grade. I wasn't, the most open to it because I was afraid of how hard it would be. And sure enough, it was a very, very difficult year, but there's many silver linings to it that came out of that year, which I look back on and going, well, I gained a lot from that year. Even though it was tough, I gained a lot and I learned to swim. Like, you were put into the water, but I learned to swim. So, I was forced in the water, but I became good at swimming, and I got through that grade with flying colors. I will say, I got a Pride Award for that. It's actually hanging up in my room by my dresser. But so that first day was, really, really tough in 7th grade because that was a sudden change in my life. I remember the rules were very, very tough. Immediately, the homework and everything and what we were doing was a lot. We were going to be covering a lot, and it was just so many, new things that we were learning, and it was exciting, but it was very, very scary. It was very scary and alarming, and I had a difficult time digesting that and integrating it and really, adjusting to that change. And it was not a good, story. I remember several days in 7th grade, I went home and I packed up, for the bus, and I had to, really, really rush because there was a lot of homework, and I had to get into my locker and do all that. And there was one day where, in 7th grade, where I was rushing to put all the things in my bag, and then I got on the bus when the buses were just leaving and the bus had to stop for me to get on. And the bus driver was like, you need to be more responsible and be on time. Well, looking back, he was right. the way that I was doing it was not the right way. The way of doing it would have been for me to, but I mean, he was not understanding my situation. I will say that he wasn't understanding how frustrating it was. However, I do have to look at myself in the mirror and say, if I would have packed before the class got out, let's say, packed, before that first class, that last class period, and then had my bag and everything ready to go, and then just put the other homework that I needed to do for that class in there, then I would be probably on time for the bus. So there was a point to what he was saying. He, wasn't probably pinpointing that, but now looking back, I kind of take it and interpret it that way. So those sudden changes, and the very, very first day, I went home from 7th grade, forgot my backpack, and then later on in the following year, when I was in another grade, and another student was in 7th grade, and he had a helmet to bring to school because he forgot his backpack. Also, like deja vu, I've been there, I've done the same thing, and in the same grade. And so I was on the bus, and I felt behind me. I was like, I didn't have my backpack, and then I came home and I cried. I just broke down in tears because it was so tough. The first day was so tough and so long, and it was so alarming, and it was just, I just was so unprepared for it. Like, I expected a lot of homework, I expected it to be difficult, but I was shocked. I was unprepared for the sudden change. And so I cried and, all that kind of thing. I had things to comfort. I had my family, of course, but sudden changes, bother me, and that's some examples of those sudden changes. Another sudden change that bothers me, I guess the sudden thing is sudden loud. Another thing with this is you're very, very sensitive to sudden loud noises, sudden stimulus, sudden all these things. For me, oh my gosh, throughout my whole school experience, fire alarms would go off in drills, and that would scare the living daylights out of me. Whenever they announced there would be a fire drill, I would get panicked, I would get anxious, I would get afraid because of how loud and how, it's loud. It hurts your ears, and I had very, very sensitive hearing growing up. I think my ears are pretty not so sensitive now, but I needed to be told when they were going to go off. I needed to have people, like assistants by me, like I was very, very tied to associates growing up, to give a little hint into that. And very, very much tied to the adult and authority people instead of my peers growing up. It was a very, very common theme for me growing up. You know, and even though I'm not an Aquarius, that is something that I read about Aquarius, that they're more inclined to look to the people older than them than their peers. But anyway, so, like the fire alarms, would go off and my ears would hurt, but it was just so sudden. Like, it was just, I needed to know when those fire alarms would go off when there were drills. Like the burglary or intruder drill, it wasn't a big deal because there was no loud sounds. You just crawled under the desk at the same side of the door, and that, wasn't big. The fire alarms really got to me and really made me afraid, and like I needed to have somebody there to just tell me or count down or something like that to tell me when these fire alarms would go off. I also will say with this that I am not the most adaptable person in the world. I like to think that I am, but I'm not the most adaptable to change. I'm not the most adaptable to, if there's rigid structure, I'm just not very adaptable to, oh my gosh, rushing me. I just want to talk about that for a second. I have North Node and Taurus. Do not rush me. Do not rush me. That is not what meant to be what I'm heading into. I meant to take it slow. I meant to take my time. What I will say is that, when my family was young, and they said, come on, let's go to the zoo, or let's go to this doctor's appointment. No, I want to do this. I don't want to go there. Like, just not the most adaptable to change. maybe to new ideas, maybe to people criticizing me, to a bunch of things that I can't really think to go into in this video, but there's a lot of aspects of my life where I am not the most adaptable to changes and to all this kind of things like that. Now, another thing which kind of goes along with my Scorpio South Node, I had this tendency when I'm interested in something to only focus on that one thing, to really put the blinders on and be all intense into that one thing and focus on that one thing so intensely that I lose sight almost of the other things. Like, I'm aware of the other things, but I just don't invest my mental energy in that. Like, I'm only consumed with one thing. Like, I kind of can talk your ear off about a certain topic. If you're, able to listen, and if you're available, I can talk about this topic, till the cows come home, because I want to talk about it. It's very common with Mercury and Taurus to want to talk about certain things, to be obsessed about certain things. Like, when I'm interested in something, I talk about that over and over again, and in conversations, and before I say that, oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. I had something that I wanted to say, but it just slipped. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. It may come to me later. Who knows? But I become very, very obsessed about things. Like, I become very, very obsessed about certain things that I'm into. Like, I'm glad. What I was gonna say is, I'm glad I'm not in conversations talking about all these different topics and being scattered and being flaky, if that's right, the right word to use, and being interested in this thing, interested in that thing, and not really committing, and being very, very superficial, and talking about everything that I don't have specific things to talk about that are specific to my interests. So I'm glad I have discernment. I'm glad I have my likes and dislikes. I'm glad I have certain things to talk about that are certain things, few things that I'm very, very interested in. However, my mom has, family has kind of told me, well, how about you change the topic up in conversation? How about you, try to talk about, or, it's so much about who I am as an individual when we're in conversation. Like, I tend to really talk about myself in conversation. And so family has suggested to me, why don't you ask, how are you doing, and all of that? Like, that's my moon in Libra. That's the balance of my moon in Libra. And I tend to lean into that because that's what I need to feel emotionally secure as a moon in Libra person. Is to be open and considerate and open up and get along with others. Like, peace and harmony in relationships is very, very important to me, especially now. And when there is disharmony, I don't really feel like disharmony is going to really bother me when I don't feel. But when I do believe I really feel out of balance, and all those things. I mean, I have the Aries Sun energy. I have the kind of ping pong between the Aries Sun and Libra Moon energy in my chart. Aries wants you to be independent, be self-sufficient, and focus on the individual and your identity. Libra couldn't be less about that. It could be others, relationships, harmony. Like, they could not be more opposite in energies. And so, thank goodness I was born after the full moon, but with this sun and moon in my chart, so that I would be more balanced. And actually, all my family, my dad has sun in Leo, moon in Aquarius, my mom has moon in Gemini, so we're all air moons. Like, think about that. We're all air moons, and so we get along very, very well. We understand each other on an emotional level, which is so important because the moon is how you understand yourself and need to be nurtured and need to be taken care of on an emotional level in relationships. And so it's all intellectual, it's all ideas. We need to talk about our feelings, we need to have conversations. Like, it's all the air. So I am very, very fortunate to have both my parents and I have our moons in all three air signs in our charts. The sun signs are not consistent, but the moon signs are, in that kind of way. And there's synastry and all that I don't want to go into. But In conversations, I tend to, focus on one thing or a couple of things to talk about. It was a while back, it was cooking shows and Chow Italia. Now it's my video making and my, video editing and, what I'm proud of and all of that. It used to be, the books that I'm reading or astrology or, the things that I'm interested in. I just tend to fixate on those things when I talk in conversations. Now, this impacts communication, and I didn't really find this out, but I will say you're hearing me now and you're listening to how clear I am. If I was making videos back in 2020 or 2016, 2015, you would hear a major difference because my speech really inconsistent. I was mispronouncing my R's. Instead of saying the word stirred, stowed. I would say stowed. Instead of saying my last name Curdy, I would say Cody. Instead of there, I would, I can't, make fun of it, but you get the point. Short would be short. And the beginnings of R sounds, and there were other, issues like my S's and T's, whatever, but the beginnings of my R sounds, like the beginning of words, would also be very unclear, and I found that in 2021 my speech was inconsistent, like I was pronouncing the R's at the end of words and not the beginning. So I realized this is an issue and I want to get this fixed and remedied because this bothers me. I want to talk in a consistent way. So I recorded myself reading book after book, reading chapter after chapter, trying to train my speech and trying to train my mouth to get the R sounds consistent. And so I had speech helpers, speech, therapists to help me out with speech growing up, especially 2015, 2016. And so that was that kind of way for me about speech. So I was born with that speech impediment. So in the younger videos of me that I did happen to post on this channel and on my other accounts, you can go see them, please don't judge me, you will find that my speech is not the clearest. But that was me back then, that's not me now. All the content that I'm producing now is new, current videos. Now, another thing that I found very, very recently in conversations is I don't know the right time and place to talk about things, and I am working on that. It is something that I'm very aware of, and I'm working on that. Like when we're getting our coffee at Casey's the other day, I was bringing up a topic in conversation that had nothing to do with that. I was talking to my mom. Or like reading the social cues to determine when it's the right time to talk or not. Like when my mom, for example, wakes up in the morning, she likes to have a morning of peace, and then I talk, and then I start having conversations. Like that's not the right time and place to talk. Or when you're doing something business-like, that involves like a functional procedure, and then I talk about something, about astrology or about history or whatever, then it's not the right time to talk about that kind of thing. So that's what I'm learning to, get better at being more aware of. This is a question. Do I have issues with boundaries? Do I have issues with the things that I say, oversharing, doing all those kind of things? With, what I share and the speech that comes out of my mouth. And I also think, oh, this is a very, very big one that I totally forgot to mention, with boundaries. I don't want to go too far into that. Empathizing with others has been very, very difficult my whole life. Like I empathize with things really, really strongly. Like I can, like music, I feel music, very, very strongly. And I have a talent with just playing music, for instance. And I may foreshadow this, get into this a little bit later, but I have a certain, like when I played, I need to write this down. When I played, piano, when I was young, I started, very, very basic things, and slowly I built it to, what I have now, and I'm producing songs and all that. But I do not play piano the typical way with all 5 fingers and do all that. Like I'm taking piano lessons and I'm learning to read music formally, and reading music has always been a struggle in my life. but I'm very, very good at just coming up with a song and being able to put melody to it with playing it in that way and just being able to sing it so naturally. And my tune when I sing, as you can probably hear by my videos, is just almost perfectly tuned into that melody. I'll get to that a little bit later, but what I want to talk about is empathy. Like, it has been really, really difficult for me. Like, I have to constantly, judging myself about it and questioning myself about empathy. And sometimes I do tend to say things impulsively without thinking them through. Just say something out of impulse. I was very outspoken when I was little in family situations, because my sun and Aries in the 4th house is very outspoken, and I express my Aries energy in the 4th house because I have my sun in the 4th house, my Mercury in the 4th house, so I communicate that with family. But not necessarily at school and everything like that. I was very shy because my moon in Libra is in the 10th house, which means that I'm very, very shy and introverted in work, in business, and getting out into the world and making a name for myself. So my sun and my moon do not have directional strength to them, because the sun is more comfortable in the 10th house and the moon is more comfortable in the 4th house. So I have the reverse of that. So it's I have a kind of an interesting chart in regards to that. I think my chart is very interesting, as you would think your own chart is very interesting. My mom thinks her chart is very interesting. But anyway, I'm babbling on. So, but anyway. Empathy. I said things that would hurt others when I was young, without thinking them through, that were very, very impulsive and kind of insensitive. I didn't have any bad intentions. Like, my intentions were to hurt them or to be mean to them. I was just expressing my truth. I was expressing what, was authentic to me in the moment and what I felt like I genuinely wanted to do. I will be honest, though, I have kind of, matured into who I am now, where I can feel like I can safely express my authentic self because of my Libra moon, and I will say that I have matured, that's the right word to use in this video, to be more empathetic and be more sympathetic and understanding of others, and sometimes I'm so concerned with myself that I'm not concerned with others' experiences and what others are going through. So I will say that something that is necessarily wrong with me is empathy. Another thing that I've kind of had in my whole school experience is the whole thing about talking to myself. And this is kind of going off what it is about, the whole autism thing is about. But I've kind of talked to myself. Like, I've kind of I have thoughts that I need to express out, for a time way back in the middle of February, February 17th or something around there. I was talking to myself a lot. It was a constant thing, and I felt like I had no off button. I was talking to myself in the shower. I was talking to myself at work when I was doing things, like talking to myself, so much that I just was like, ooh, this is unbalanced. I need an off button to this. I'm sharing way too much. I feel like I'm, not making me feel the most comfortable when actually talking to real people, since I'm so absorbed in myself and talking about myself so much. I'm not making pretend videos, like I'm making legitimate videos out to the public, so I feel more comfortable, doing this, because they're public videos and whatever. But I try to just, now, I barely talk to myself at all. I'm, back to normal again. But for a time in the middle of February this year, I was talking to myself a lot, and throughout school, I was talking to myself a lot because I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to, or I didn't have barely any friends in school. I just had things to say that I just wanted to express, and that was a difficult thing. Now, I have had difficulty forming relationships with others in school, difficulty forming relationships with friends, get conversation starters, connecting with them, asking questions, carrying out a conversation appropriately. Like, I've struggled with that throughout my whole experience. Like it's hard for me to connect to others. my North Node is not supporting that. I guess my Gemini energy and my Libra Moon and all the air in my chart is kind of like a North Node to that, but my real North Node is pointing towards Taurus, and my South Node is in the 11th house of groups, friendships, and that's, the downside of that. So I'm kind of moving away from that, yet I'm healing that. And maybe when I get more aligned with my values and my own personal truth and get comfortable and live a life of peace, I can then open up to others and share life with. So it's like it's not you're totally rejecting the South Node and moving into the North Node. You're moving away from the shadows of your South Node, and you to move into your North Node. Therefore, you are balancing out the positives of your South Node, and when you drop into that, it feels natural. It feels home. Like you need to just not ignore your South Node. You need to balance it out. Like that's an astrological truth. And so I really want to do a whole video on my North Node placement, because I had a dream. I had a dream that I was talking about. I was like, I need to make a video about this now. Like I had a dream, and I think I'm going to do that. Like I'm going to read through the tendencies to leave behind and the attributes to develop in Jen Spiller's book. Maybe read to you some excerpts from that. Go in depth about it. The other information that I have, like it's going to be a long, in-depth video. I'm just going to tell you, maybe longer than the other astrology videos. It may be a long video because it's so personal to me, and I really want to go deep with it. So I just wanted to say that. But so anyway, I've had difficulty connecting with others in my life. Now, I will also say that I am very, very, very smart. Very, my Jupiter and Virgo and everything like that, I'm very, very smart. Like something with people with like Asperger's, for instance, are very, very intelligent. They have a high functioning intelligence. And so I did do a little bit of research coming into this video so that I could give you the full picture of how this relates to my life. So I'm giving you kind of some of this is what I've come up with, and some of this is what I've found out about Asperger, level 1 autism. So, very, very smart, very intelligent. You're going to find that in my videos now. I speak so well, with, very intellectually attractively, in my opinion. Very, really, really well spoken, articulating things really, really well, very smart. Like, I'm very, very intelligent. I'm very, I know my stuff when it comes to astrology and the things that I talk about that I know. So you're going to find that. Something about Mercury and Taurus is they cannot do the gray areas of life. They need things to be simple and straightforward in black and white. And that's how my mind functions. I am the Gemini energy, which makes me more open to the gray areas and complexities and nuance and, all those things like that, new ideas. But, my mind just happens to work very, very simple, and I need things to be very, very simple. Like, I need a rule to stick to that I'm not going to bend with these days, that I'm not going to break. I understand things in a very simplistic, very black and white ways, and it's, very extreme. Like, it's one way or the other way in my mind. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. Like, just don't delete just a couple of videos, delete all the videos. Or, don't, there's many, many other examples to this. But very rigid, very black and white, not the most flexible. Another thing that can come back to this is just being kind of emotionally reactive, like, really, really reacting to things, not responding necessarily, not thinking through things before you say them, like being very, very emotionally just acting out against things, expressing your anger, expressing your joy in an uninhibited way. Now, I have Earth in my chart. I have, I think that's probably more lower level, or higher level, on the spectrum or whatever. If it's higher or low, like levels 2 or 3, where they, So what I'm learning to lean into in this life is, is, controlling my emotions, because in the past, I think that, being very, very emotionally reactive and all those things is levels 2 and 3 on the spectrum, but I'm very, very emotionally controlled. I feel like I'm very, very self-aware these days, and so, controlling my emotions and not being, like when I was growing up, as natural as a kid, you were very, very reactive and very, yelling and screaming and doing all those things, but like at age 12, I was still throwing a couple temper tantrums over things. I was still doing that at age 12. So that I find that very, very interesting, and I hope that that doesn't trouble you or concern you that at age 12, I shared in my Progress Saturn in Virgo video that I had this one experience in 2017 where I was at Culver's and I criticized the food because I didn't like it. I kind of was upset about it. I made a big deal about it. Yeah. So, looking back, I do regret that, but I did not control my emotions the best in that way. And as a result, we just ended up going home and not going golfing because of the way that I was acting. Um, and just communicating appropriately. Saying the right thing to others, connecting with others. I forgot what I was going to say in response to this, but just reading social cues is kind of the basic, thing with this, that comes down to is sometimes with this autism one, it's kind of difficult for people that have it to read social cues. And so, not communicating clearly, but just, doing all those kind of things like that. So social cues and body language is very, very difficult. And I'm very, very, people with autism one are very, 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 like they stay the course of things. They are very steadfast with their things. They're very, they're very, very determined. They have one thing and they're very obsessed about it and they're very, on that there. Another thing is they're very attentive to details. And I can thank my Jupiter and Virgo for that. Like I'm really, really attentive to details and I'm very, very good with certain details in my life. Not all details, but quite a few. I'm very, very good at paying attention to that. And another thing that I want to kind of go into is I am, throughout my whole life, I have been so hypersensitive to what people say and how they say, particularly how they say it. Like, I am so sensitive to the tone of voice, and I could easily take things as offense and as criticism when they did not intend for that to happen. Because I am so sensitive in conversation. Like, my mom, makes a comment about, one of my videos, and I take it personally. Um, and, um, just, in school, there was this, one teacher that I perceived had a tone that I did not like to her voice. Like, it was what I remember, and if I had to go back, I would really see that experience with more clarity. But, the way that she communicated to me, like when people are mad at me or frustrated at me or communicate things in even an honest, serious way, that like I tend to become very judgmental over that, become very, very sensitive to the tone of voice and the phrasing and the word used, and I tend to get off on the littlest details of what people say and how they say it, not looking at the overall big picture of, hey, they said all these things in this sentence and it wasn't bad. I just tend to fixate on the little thing that they said that I didn't like, that I was very sensitive to, that based off of the tone of what others say in their tone of voice. So that's one of the things that I just wanted to throw in here. That is all I have to say about me and being, diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum level. When I think it's very, very important to share this, I'm not, I don't have a mental disability or anything, or anything like that. I did start off with that quote, but I do not think, I think it interferes with my life. I just, like, for example, oh my gosh, for me to be put with other children who have different disabilities, like actual disabilities, mental disabilities, I would feel really, really uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. I would feel out of my element. This is against my values. I would be cringing. And I would be, just that would not be the right place for me. And I don't want to be associated with all of that. That's what I want to make clear. I do not want to be associated with someone who has, like, issues in the mind. And if I see a single comment that says, whoa, you have issues with this and whatever, well, I'm going to post that song, for starters, that I made a while ago, about how I'm not going to take things personal. You're not going to get the better of me. I'm not going to be living from the inside out and not the outside in. You're not going to judge me. You're not going to hurt me. And I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to be honest. You should not say that. I take offense to that. I will really defend myself if somebody should make a comment under any one of my videos because of what I say or how I say it, that then makes me feel like, oh, I'm a bad person. Makes me look at myself going, oh, I'm a bad person. It makes me look bad. It makes me feel bad about myself. I don't need that from anyone. That is a reflection of them putting that back to me. That is their projection, not me. And so I don't need any of that in my comment section. I don't need any of it. And I don't want any of it. And that's what I really, really want to make clear before just leaving this video. I will say, I'm trying not to promote my videos and posts in every single video that I do, like I did that in one video. Ooh, not everybody's gonna see this because my following is not big enough and barely anybody reads my community posts. Like, I wish that more people read my community posts. And like I shared, like, who's gonna see that post about, because I shared about my placements, that I shared my placements in one of my videos, like, who's gonna see that post? Barely anyone saw that post. And I presented it like you saw that post. So I caught myself and I was like, no, I'm gonna try to get out of promoting, and referring to this video, referring to that video. I'm just recommending to you that I did post something in the community tab in the posts of my channel, which is about an experience that I had very, very recently, and a lesson that I've learned, that I think that you'll find very important, very, very interesting, that I just did not want to share in a podcast episode. I just wanted to share it in a written post and just get it out before anything else. So anyway, that is all I have to say, and I will see you in the next podcast episode.